Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brian Lamar, the host of the Youth Leaders in Wealth Management podcast. Today, I'm joined by Daniel Keever, the president of Evergreen Financial Marketing. How are you doing today, Daniel?
I'm doing well, Ryan. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate you giving me some time to talk to you. I wanted to take this time to get to really learn about what you do and have you share your experiences in the financial marketing realm. To kind of start the conversation off, what is financial marketing?
Um, at face value, it is exactly what it sounds like, but I would say the biggest difference is that when you are marketing for financial advisors, you're asking for something that is very different than most of what marketing deals with out and about in the world, right? We'll get into this later, but working as a general agency before financial advisors specifically, there's a big difference between marketing a $20 hat and marketing a sell me your life savings, right? So just the
Yeah.
difference between the level of trust that's needed, the combination of bedside manner and technical expertise. Financial marketing is very different because it reflects just the gravity of what's being sold in financial services.
Yeah, definitely can be very different. I appreciate you giving me the difference on the two of those. Kind of a question that follows from that is like, how did you decide to get into financial marketing specifically?
Yeah, it's definitely something that came about organically. I would say it was not the original plan. The nutshell is that, and I left my first job. I started a marketing agency, and we started growing. When I say we, it was me. I was a solopreneur. Started growing pretty quickly, but then hit a ceiling and got stuck. We were in maybe a dozen different industries, excuse me, with clients in everything from financial services to private aviation, jet charters to mechanical engineering. And I ran into an issue that, on one hand, it's hard to hire other people that would be an expert in 12 different industries, and let alone I wasn't one. And from that, the second point was the clients for each of those types of businesses were drastically different. And for us to be effective marketers, we had to basically say, we need to understand what your clients are looking for, not just how you describe your business. And so a number of years back, we basically just made the decision, hey, if we were to pick any one sector of our clients that we know well, we get good results for, that we like to work with more of them, which one would it be? And sitting on a beach, a little bit stressed, thinking about work in the back of my head, as entrepreneurs do, I we basically settled on financial services. My dad is a financial advisor. He's been in the business 30 years, has done very, very well. We loved our financial advising clients. We felt like we knew what they did. We could talk with them about their business in a way that was much more personal and much more reflected personal experience, I should say. And so from there, we basically just said, hey, if we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And within about 12 months, we shed 80% of our clients that were in other industries, but replaced them almost dollar for dollar with advisors, specifically like independent shops, things like that, and just never looked back. So today, I think we have one or two clients that are still on from our legacy projects. One of them is my mom, and we're not going to fire her. So apart from that, it's pretty much all financial services, including independent shops, RIAs, talking with some investment boutiques, just anyone that's in that space.
Thank you for sharing all that. And, it's cool that you were able to kind of completely transition away from that segment of clients and
A
then
little
to
stressful.
be able to, yeah, definitely stressful, like, I'm sure. But then to completely replace that almost dollar to dollar with the clients that you felt like you could better serve is so important to be able to use your skills in the avenue you felt like was going to be the most successful. And kind of a question I have off of that is, do you think a traditional degree in finance would be helpful for something like this, or more a marketing degree? What do you think would be the best educational route for something like this?
Both my wife and I's our experience with education is that what we thought we were going to do is not what we've ended up doing, and we're still young. It could change again, but to the extent that whatever background you come at it with a unique perspective. I have met students in like basically a collegiate track for financial services, financial planning. I met one actually just recently at a conference that said, I don't know that I want to be an advisor, but I like the marketing side of things. Now,
Mhm.
she might have a huge head start in that area because she's going to school to get the working knowledge of what's being provided and what's being done. But I will say, whether you're coming from a marketing degree, like a communications or a business plan, For me, it's a little bit different because I have the marketing side, also the entrepreneurial hat. Anyone that you own your business, you know, the business development's a whole separate set of skills. But as far as financial marketing, marketing background is great. I would say financial services is probably great if you yourself like the communication side. Um, and I would even just say there's questions that come up along the lines of why are you a marketer and not an advisor, especially if your dad owns a shop, things like that. I would say for me, I find that I love talking to people about the world of financial planning and the world of decision making and motivations and things like that. But I'm also not a detail person, and I don't think I would want me to be my financial advisor. And so, just with you say, hey, do you have to be in marketing? Do you have to be in this and the other? I think you have to have a passion for the space. Add a technical side of your tool belt with your education, but almost everything you can learn on the job, especially sitting under some really good people.
Yeah, that seems like a common theme that most of what you learn really comes from on the job and not necessarily the the education, like more like 5-10% of what you're learning in school can be applicable to what you're actually doing, which is important to know, especially when kids, like I see it in myself, like you get stressed out, like do I need to know how the every supply and demand thing works? I was studying economics. Is that going to be a major contributor to my career? Maybe not. But it's good to know that you can get in there and really just get your feet wet and learn through that. So that's important to me as
And
well.
I'm sure you hear this in terms of you're sitting under some really good advisors. They're absolutely, you need the technical chops, right? You can't be a good advisor if you don't know the tools, if you don't know the strategies. But how much value is that if you don't know how to communicate to a client to get them motivated to actually take the advice you're giving them, right? And so
100%.
part of this is just when you have the human and communicative side, that's really hard to learn in a textbook. And again, for you on the early end of an advisor career, I'm sure you'll pick your head up in 10 years and you're like, man, the stuff that I've learned trying to convince clients to take action or trying to learn how to comfort clients or how to encourage clients, that kind of stuff, you just have to learn by doing. It's true in the marketing side too.
Learning by doing is the best teacher. I love the mindset of like see, do, teach, and that's part of what youth leaders is, right? I saw how to do something and then I did it, and I felt like the best way to move forward with it and learn more is to teach it, right? So I'm sure yourself, like if you're trying to teach a client how to market, it just makes you so much better at marketing because you're understanding the nuances, and maybe teaching it shows you a different lens that you didn't think about before. So I think that's a really great opportunity that you have over here. And then so kind of transitioning into a little bit more about your day to day. So what does the day to day look like for you? I'm sure that can be variable, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe on a week to week basis, what does that look like at Evergreen?
Yeah, so it's a good question. We're in a stage where we are attempting to build for scale right now. I'm very thankful that we currently have the issue of a backlog of onboardings. We have a wait list that we're trying to build up for, so we know it's coming, but we're building along with it. And so a lot of my day to day is on the strategic side in terms of directing client strategies. So that is everything from planning out topics, targets, campaigns, things like that, overseeing execution, and then especially taking accountability on the back end for results, or in specific areas, maybe lack of results, and finding the things that we need to do to get client progress moving again. And then business development, as our team grows, it's definitely been a matter of taking what started as a solopreneur shop and turning it into processes and systems. And I look at that, and my project manager, who's like my right hand person, Melissa, she has been just like instrumental in helping take things off of my plate, put them on other people's plates, which is a great feeling. But my day to day has started to move heavily towards strategies and interacting more directly with our advisors, instead of being stuck in the weeds on the back end, which has been delightful.
Definitely sounds delightful to be able to move away from all that stuff on the back. So, kind of another question I have based off that is like, what's your favorite part about working with advisors? Is it seeing the growth? Is it creating successful advertising campaign? Where does that really spark your interest and be like, oh, I'm excited to do what I do?
It's a good question. One side of this is selfish, is that I get to sit under people who have been in the industry 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and they have so many stories, so much experience, so much insight into just the way life works and people work and the way money works. Um, it's just amazing. We do an interview based model for all of our content. So I just sit and I ask them questions and we mine their experiences, and the stuff that comes out, selfishly for me, it's like sipping from a fire hose, and it's been one of my favorite parts of the job. The other side of it, though, maybe a little less selfish, is a good financial advisor can change the course of multiple generations of a family. You know, just in terms of their families that have high ideals, high character, high conviction, but they just don't know how to use the financial tools. They don't know the strategies to help execute on that. And so when we are successful as marketers, it means the phenomenal advisors that we get to work with are bringing their impact to more and more families, or deeper impact to the families they already work with. And getting to see that work done firsthand, getting to hear the stories directly from the advisors and their clients, it is hard not to be excited about what we do. I'll give you one example. There is a client of ours that is working on organizing family meetings. And just in terms of family meetings, being a multi-generational vision cast of this is what we want to see in terms of values and strengths, and helping to accelerate generations 2 and 3 in their success and prosperity. And it is so cool to see advisors instigating that with the families they work with. Families that have multi-generational wealth, but not a curriculum or a platform to actually have those conversations. And so stuff like that, you just know that sitting as a grandkid or maybe an adult child under one of those families, that multiple generations can be changed by a healthy relationship with money, instigated by a financial advisor, and we get to play a part in supporting and promoting that. Things like that are just amazing.
Yeah, circling back to, I like what you said about sipping from a fire hose, all that information. I remember the first time we spoke, you told me about that process. So can you just give us a little bit more about what that process is like, that interview style, for the people that don't necessarily understand what you meant by that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you just a little bit of context to go with it. And I know that you're probably feeling this way. We chatted a little bit about your experience so far sitting under one of the more successful firms in the country. Um, there is a knowledge, and I would say just a competence that comes with that 20, 30 years of being in the industry, right? And it's something that someone younger like you or I, we can't manufacture that life
Mhm.
experience. The best we can do is sit under someone that has it. And so for me, I realized very early on, my dad, again, has been doing this 30 years. I, if I tried my hardest, worked 80 hours a week, would take years and years and years and years to catch up to where he is in terms of his knowledge base and his wisdom. Now, as a marketer, that's a problem, right? So when you're a ghostwriter and you're trying to, per se, imitate the voice of the advisor you're working with, or you're trying to capture their expertise, that's really hard to do when you don't have it firsthand. And this isn't just an age thing. Even if you're just, per se, just a marketer and you've been doing this 20 years, you know a lot, but there's still a gap because you are not the one sitting with your clients. You're not the one sitting with your prospects. And so for us, that was one of the more challenging parts of how Evergreen was originally built. We were what I would call a more classic marketing agency. We did ghostwriting, social media, all that kind of stuff. But it was coming from a place of, we listen to your business, we learn about it a little bit, and we try and fabricate your voice. We flipped this on its head when we realized the number of times that advisors would just drop stories in a meeting that were like, where was that when we were writing that blog? That's amazing. And also, just sitting with my dad, I know that he has certain conversations that come up every new client meeting that are like, these are the pillars. This is the most concise way to communicate this. And like, we use this as a pillar of our voice here at our company. And it's like all of our advisors we work with have those anecdotes, have those client experiences, have those key conversations that they have over and over again. And so our conversation was, rather than try and, per se, get the advisor's review and feedback at the end of the process, what if we got their input at the beginning of the process? So for all of our content for our marketing agency, it is all interview based. For every one of our clients, once a month, there is a virtual interview. Looks just like this one, feels like a Zoom call, right? And we sit down with a list of questions that we go over ahead of time, and we just ask clients or we ask advisors to tell their stories. It could be anything from experiences with clients to conversations about social security optimization, right? But the biggest difference is, one, we immediately get this in studio quality. We help upgrade their video, their lighting, all that stuff. But we have a video first marketing strategy. It puts their face, their voice, reputation front and center. But we also get, per se, in the transcript, a written version of their voice that we can then polish and tailor to everything from blogs to social media to email nurturing to advertisements. So we do the virtual interviews. We also do professional interviews for a number of our clients. But the thing that we love about it is we are mining their experience and stories. Their job is just to be the mountain full of gold, right? Ours is to find it, dig it out, polish it up, and put it on display. That's what a good marketer can do, but we don't have to have your first person point of view and experience and wisdom. We just need to have access to it. So that's what, when we say interview, all of our clients now are interview based, and it has transformed our ability to make an impact on their clients and prospects.
It sounds like really an incredible process and idea that you guys have really acted on, and to be able to mine those stories as you quoted, and get them to really get into the weeds of what they're doing, and like you said, like you're writing a blog post and you're like, oh, where was that story then, right? So it's like that sounds like a really, really awesome thing that you guys are doing. And
As
then I
a
kind of
question for you, because imagine it's similar, you've probably had, again, sipping out of a fire hose, learning a ton of technical knowledge on the job, right?
yeah.
But I also imagine for you, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that there's a handful, like one or two stories that you were told. Maybe it was about someone's experience as an advisor or a client story, things like that. But which one sticks with you more? Which one like motivates you more? Do you remember more? Is it the one or two stories, or is it the fountain of technical knowledge?
It's definitely the stories. Storytelling is really embedded in human psychology, and that's how we remember a lot of things, right? So I'm reading a book right now called Putting Stories to Work, about storytelling.
It's an excellent book. It's one of my
Yeah,
favorites.
great. Yeah, I'm glad that you like that one, because I did some digging to find it. But it's really good teaching me about storytelling, and you're definitely right in asking that question. Stories matter more. That's what people remember. They don't remember statistics or facts. That's just not how the human brain operates. But you craft a beginning, a middle, and an end with some type of theme around it, that's way more likely to remember, right? So that book that we were just talking about, that into every chapter is crafted like a story. There's some type of story to illustrate the point, and that makes you remember the chapters much more, because you think back at the stories, and then you could find the theme from there rather than just thinking about the fact or the theme that comes from it. So that's very important.
It's true for a young advisor. It's true for marketing. Your clients aren't going to remember the tables of the vesting schedules of their equity, but it's they understand the structure of the knowledge based on the stories. That's what I love about the interview model too, is just the stories carry so much more weight and make you so much more memorable.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I just want to circle back about the family thing. Helping advisors service more families is so important to me. It's part of who I am. I wanted to be in this career to help people, help families stay together and create that multi-generational change from being, just from the knowledge that we have to be able to push someone in the right direction can really change people's lives. Like, if the actions that I do today affect my grandchildren, my great grandchildren, can possibly put them through a college they wouldn't be able to afford without me. Like, that's something that I want to be able to do, and I want to help other people do that as well, right? So I definitely am I agree with you on that point. So I kind of wanted to transition a little bit more about challenges. So what's some of the biggest challenges that you've come across in your career so far?
The number one challenge is the one I referenced when we switched to the interview model, and that was finding the true deep value in the voice that we bring to advisors' marketing strategies. And just in my experience, there's no substitute for getting it right from the advisor's mouth. It's just the first person lived experience is so critical. The other challenge that I would say, though, is that pretty much all of our clients are also business owners. in terms of they're an advisor that wears the owner hat, which means the slice of their time pie that's given to marketing has to be small. We can't be a drain with a ton of asks or else nothing gets done. And so one of the biggest things that we've had to do is ask for less and less. And it's made us prioritize what activities are highest value as far as results. Because if we only have limited time and a limited amount to say, hey, can you review this or can you sign off on this? Then we really need to make sure that what we're asking for is high value. And so what that's meant is that there's continuous waves of what I affectionately call inconvenience for us. But when we figure out how to deliver that, it transforms into a much smoother client relationship, right? I think advisors, again, you guys have a parallel track of the best way for your clients to get nothing done is to give them 100 things to do versus what's the next thing for them to do? What are their top 3 things that they need to do? So very, very similar. You always have to be working on the business model. What you do is only valuable if it gets done, right? And so that is probably some of the most difficult learning curves we've had at times where we've had to tweak our review process. We've had to find ways in our overall process to limit the number of times we're asking for sign off or feedback or things like that. And the more we can only put high value asks on a client's desk, the more we can get done, the more results we can get. The other thing, and this is kind of a funny, I guess, side conversation outside of the industry specific, is that in our family, both my wife and I are entrepreneurs, but we also have a very high priority on being intentional to guard our time together. And so this is kind of a rabbit trail, but it has always been kind of funny trying to be a service provider and a business owner, an entrepreneur, but limiting the temptation to just entrepreneur hours every which direction, right? The 80-hour a week, got to get this thing off the ground. And similar to prioritizing for our clients, when you only have so much limited time because you're placing boundaries on your own work-life balance, it's forced me in the best way to be much better at prioritizing what really matters. What is clutter and what is priority? And I think it's one of the healthiest things we've ever done for the business. It's forced us to not just, brute force things and waste our energy on low ROI activity.
Yeah, and what you just said there is so important for entrepreneurs, solopreneurs, really anyone in a career, is to not let the business or your job get in the way of what your real priorities are, right? So, I read this book, the Psychology of Money, and it's a great book. But I think one of the things he talked about in it was a few people that I'm blanking on the names right now, but investors that they had so much money, and they just kept moving the goalpost out, right? And it led them to do illegal things and end up losing everything, going to jail. So like deciding when enough is enough is important. But what you're saying relates to that in the sense that like you have to decide what your values are, what you're really striving for, and not let everything else get in that way, right? It's like if you decided to work because you wanted to buy a house and a car and have enough money to retire, and you get there and all of a sudden like your goals change, you need to sit down and just think about that for a second. And maybe my goals do change, but like you said, making sure you don't put too much time and completely sacrifice those hours that you want to be with your family for this, when maybe that's not even necessarily what you want, but you just kind of feel like that and you get caught up with the emotions of being an entrepreneur and trying to win the game in that sense. So that's really important what you just said.
I think it's another Morgan Housel. I can't remember if it's Psychology or of Money or Same as Ever, but he says when you pick your role models, don't basically mirror their goals or their success if you aren't willing to exactly mirror their sacrifices. And it is funny because I know a lot of people who in the business world are very successful that I want to learn from. And there's no one specific in this comment, but just in terms of, but like their marriages are struggling or their relationship with their kids is struggling. Or for me, I'm a person of faith. They are disconnected from their church, things like that. It's one of those, I want to be successful. I want to build this thing into something incredible. And I feel like we're making progress towards that. And on the days where I feel like, you know what, if I weren't done at X hour of the day, I probably would be more successful. But what I've learned in the last couple of years, especially, is that the process of refining and having to prioritize is one of the best things we've ever done for our company, right? So we're still protecting it. The family time is the family time for its own sake. The strong marriage, the desire to be close to the kids that we have, it's still important. And the side effect is a healthier, better run business. We're removing clutter because we don't have time for it. That's one of the best things, best side products, side products we've ever had.
That's one way to get rid of clutter for sure. And what you reference, I'm pretty sure that's the same as Ever, another one of Morgan Housel's bookcase. And I remember it because he said like everyone that has something that's super extraordinary about them makes that they're probably lacking extraordinarily in another aspect of their life.
Mm-hmm.
So people like Elon Musk that people idolize, or be like, I want to be like him, and there's great things about Elon Musk, but he also doesn't care about any type of customs or rules and stuff like that, and maybe that's not great all the time to do. The story in that book was about the fighter pilot who was one of the most genius fighter pilots.
He's also a jerk.
Yeah. Also, real nasty person. People did not like to be around him, but they needed him because he was so intelligent at flying planes. So it's like you got to choose, pick and choose your battles in that sense as well. So, those are some great books to read, and definitely eye openers on psychology.
And I know you're teeing up one more question, but a note to advisors who I think have probably lived this: when you're faced with clients who don't have the time of day to work with you, sometimes that's just the client's fault. They're too busy. They're not prioritizing. Sure. But it's funny. I was talking with an advisor who was lamenting lack of engagement from their clients. And I'm not an advisor. I haven't sat at that desk, but I've heard this line before. I said, what, give me an example of something you asked your clients to do and that they didn't do it. And they provided me a list from the last meeting, scrubbed the names out, that kind of thing. Like, these are their to-do items. There was 13 to-dos that were within like a 3-month window of their last meeting. And I would say all of them were important, but I also know that there was analysis paralysis going on, and it felt like such a big boulder. Like, when we get time for it? And so you turn that around and say, if you want your clients to experience the value of working with you, the excuse of, well, it's their fault, means no one gets the value. And so when we're talking about boundaries, talking about prioritizing, this is the kind of stuff that in marketing for us has been so valuable. And I know it's an exact mirror for advisors in their line of work.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And our question I kind of have similar to that is, it's about marketing mistakes. So what common marketing mistakes do you see people make, and, how could they avoid them, especially for advisors?
I say this affectionately as a member of our industry, but advisor marketing is one of the most underdeveloped marketing spaces I've ever seen. I've worked in other industries, and the norms for marketing are far more robust and far more intentional. And I would say that's unfortunately in large part earned by the marketers who have been here. You have marketing that, on one hand, if it's not specifically aware of the nuances of a financial advisor's line of work, doesn't mean it can't work, but it often means that the tactics that agencies or people like that gravitate towards might not be the right tactics for financial advisors. And I'll give you one. This is a little bit of a controversial take in my advisor marketing circles. I'm very low on SEO in terms of most of our clients. They have been established 20, 30 years. They have a high emphasis on high net worth clients. Their clients, by and large, are really not Googling financial advisors near me, right?
Yeah.
And so there's this element of maybe that's who you're going after. And if that's true, you're also competing directly with multiple multi-million-dollar brands that are dumping money, not just multi-million-dollar brands, but multi-million-dollar SEO strategies, dumping money like your Merrill Lynch's or Edward Jones or Dave Ramsey. You have other people that are going to outspend you to the moon if you go after SEO, but you have a lot of agencies that say, yo, you need to blog and do SEO. That's the kind of stuff where people say, I'm just not going to market. So many advisors are doing little to no marketing, or maybe they're just doing, call it the canned content library, so that they have something going on so they, quote, don't look dead, right? So that's a lot of advisor marketing. They're trying not to look dead while referrals happen. What we need to understand about marketing is that if it's not actively building relationship and trust, it's really not worth much. So if all of your relationship is stock photos, if it's all generic quotes, if it's all things that are absent your personality, you're going to have a hard time making any progress. And so just the contrast to that is that when you ask an advisor who's been 20 years in and is successful, what made you successful? They're going to say their relationship network and their specific, whether it's bedside manner, area of expertise, things like that. I look at most advisors' marketing and I don't see any of that coming up. It's like they're trying to build a whole separate strategy instead of amplifying their biggest value proposition. And so rather than go the more commoditized way or the personality absent way, this is why we built the interview model. We believe that your face and voice is one of the most valuable assets your brand has. How can we build around that? So if you've been doing marketing and you feel like you have not gotten any results, I think you need to, number one, refine, are we building trust and relational presence with our marketing? If the answer is no, you're not going to get almost any traction. And second of all, if we are showing up and being consistent, do we have a call to action strategy that is actually valuable? You don't get credit for lead magnets or downloads or webinars if you're just showing up and they're not really, really valuable to the person you're targeting. And I'll give you one quick example of this. A guide to, call it, social security optimization. That's a pretty good topic. It's not empty. It's not one of these things that you sit back and you say like, well, no one cares. But if you make it a 45-minute webinar in an age when people don't have 45 minutes to spare, or if they do, they put it on their calendar, but something else comes up and they suddenly get their 45 minutes back. It's like you can have a decent call to action and the wrong call to action strategy, right? So things like this, it's always about how much value are we providing in this piece of content or in this asset, and how is it best packaged? So be consistent, be relational, and make sure your call to action strategy matches the amount of value your clients or your prospects are getting.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point about SEO there that I didn't necessarily know. So like, my age, like I'm 21 years old. If I want to know something, I Google it, right? So like you said, financial advisors near me, someone who's got a higher net worth, much older than myself, is not going to be doing the same things like that. It's going to be word of mouth or other forms of advertisement or marketing that would get to them rather than SEO, right? So if that's your client base, there's no point in trying to compete with a Merrill or JP Morgan or any of those guys, because they can outspend you on that end. So that's important to understand for me, that I never really thought about it like that. So I appreciate you telling me about that. And then having strong strategies about building trust is really the key, right? Because what's the most the biggest concern with people with financial advisors? It's like, is this guy going to do right by me, right? That's probably up there in the list of worries when discussing finances and stuff. So content that builds trust, shows your personality, builds authenticity around your online personality and who you are, is so important. And it's a good mindset to have, like, that I'm thinking about. That would be important if I were an advisor right now in marketing. That makes a lot of sense to me. And then having a call to action built off of that is like the target, right? So thank you for sharing that, and giving me a better understanding of what really is going on in the weeds there.
I'll give you two quick examples of strategies that I think show a good contrast to those issues. One of them is that a good lead magnet isn't necessarily always targeting the most common problem that you would assume someone comes to a financial advisor for. It's targeting what brings them the most discomfort related to their money. And so one of our most successful lead magnets to date was ungated. No one had to give us their email. We put together a guide after interviewing our advisors on strategies as a grandparent to be intentional in supporting your adult children. That's not a question of, will I have enough, necessarily. It's, I want to help. I'm just not sure how. What are other people doing? They had a 40% download rate among their clients, close to 1,000 of them. And it was forwarded 100 times. I should say it was forwarded and then downloaded by prospects 100 times. And so it's just that piece of, that's not necessarily a will I have enough question, but it's a pain point related to money. Something I want to do, something I don't know how to do. One other example of this is an advisor who was consistently referring people to a Medicare consultant because his clients just kept asking questions about Medicare, timing, penalties, things like that. And so eventually we said, you know what? I'm getting annoyed with just having to say, hey, here's this guy's contact info. We brought him on for a webinar, shared that with their clients. Their client base started sharing it with others who were having similar challenges. And so things like this, where we just create opportunities to capitalize on what's happening in real life right in front of you with your clients and prospects. It's not about, well, let's just pick a dart or like throw a dart on the map and find out where we're going. It's what's going on in the real world. How can we build a marketing strategy that meets the need we're seeing in real time? So there's just two examples of things I would say better than, hey, let's pick a lead magnet, set up a landing page, run ads and see what happens. It's very different.
Yeah, very, very different. I appreciate the insight on that. And then, I kind of wanted to ask a question that, you could have taken your talents. You have so much talent in marketing and just become an advisor yourself and had awesome marketing and just learn that side of the business. But do you ever feel like that's something that you would want to do, or do you feel like you should have done that? Is that something that goes through your mind, or are you happy with how things have gone so far?
It's a great question. It's definitely a conversation that I've had, my wife and I have had more than once. And before I started a marketing agency, there was a job offer as a financial advisor, and that was probably the closest I ever got. But I'll say two things. One is that when I look at our ability to have an impact, financial advisors have an enormous impact. And when I look at the kinds of advisors we work with, they are way smarter than me. They have way more impact into families and generations than I would as an individual. And so when you talk about just raw impact, our ability to service many advisors who are doing this kind of work is a much bigger impact than I might have on my own as a financial advisor. But it's also been tempting. So I think you and I chatted about this on our last time we were catching up. There's a wave at the top of advisors who are retiring and a very small tail at the bottom of advisors coming in. And so the thought of like, well, what if you were just well positioned and you're training, you're building your competence to be in line for that? That's pretty tempting. But again, I'm not a detail person, and I don't think I'd want me to be my financial advisor. So regardless of the opportunity, I think I'll stick to the marketing side for now.
It makes total sense to me, and it's a decision that I'm sure came with a lot of thought and being able to really, it's an intentional one, right? To have all that wave of advisors leaving and such a small ripple coming in is I think is a great opportunity for young people to get in that are ambitious and they want to work, they want to learn, and maybe they do have to be a little more detail oriented. But if that's something that
Can
you
be
feel like
learned.
can be learned, yeah. Uh, if that's something that you feel like you could do, I mean, for me, it's about helping families, helping people, and to be able to help more people with this wave coming out is super important to me, and I'm excited about it.
And that's you're hitting the nail on the head. It's a passion question. For me, I love what financial advisors do, but what I love most is talking about it. What I love most is helping other people see the value, getting them to buy in. It's not my favorite thing, and maybe this is true for a lot of advisors, doing paperwork, setting up accounts, managing check-ins, things like that. Like there's all the logistics, you build teams and there's all that kind of stuff. But when I look at this, is that my passion, your passion is actually the hands-on work of helping the families. My passion is helping connect as many people as possible to really good advisors. If you were to tell me that that was my career path for the next 40 years, I'd be happy.
Yeah, I definitely understand that rationale. And I kind of wanted to hit a final question here is
Yeah.
for students that are interested in getting into marketing and especially financial marketing, what would be some advice going into the industry that you can give now with some hindsight?
It's a great question. I think this ties into the passion question. Going to college, being on the other side of it, one of the first things that I learned is that going to college was more about discovering what you loved than it was picking your career, right? It is always funny. It's like the senior in high school, everyone asks them, like, you're graduating. What do you want to go to school for? It's like one of those, I don't know, my job picked out yet. So I would say one of the best things that you can do is just between internships or summer jobs or whatever you can do, spend time in the business. spend time experimenting with different roles. So I'll give you one example. A friend of ours, is a college student, is interning at a local office, and she's getting to sit in on client meetings. She's getting to work through the back office. She's getting a lot of exposure to the different roles of the business. It's one of the best things that she could say, is this what I want to commit to learning about and working towards? If you're on the marketing side, I would strongly encourage time in an advisor's office. Tons of advisors want marketing interns. You might feel a little unprepared, and you might be unprepared, but that's how you prepare. Or another option, and this might be of equal value, is to spend time interning at agencies. My personal preference is small to mid-sized agencies instead of big marketing companies. You get a lot more hands-on experience into how to do things yourself. But one of the most valuable pieces of work experience for me was my first job out of college. I worked at a growing agency. We went from 200,000 a month, or 200,000 a year, to 200,000 a month in the first year. And that was just the experience of building that from the ground up with their team was one of the most valuable things I could have ever signed up for. And it's informed how I built the business from day one. So if you're interested in getting into financial marketing, time in an advisor's office would be phenomenal. And time in an agency setting where you are learning how to run a marketing strategy from people who do it all day, huge benefit.
And I really can't thank you enough for that. There are some people out there that are interested in this industry, but like yourself, and more interested in the marketing side. And being able to hear it from you, someone that has succeeded and is continuing to grow, is so important for some. I know people that are getting marketing degrees and they don't know where they want to go. And I feel like this is a great
That was
opportunity.
me.
Yeah. It's a great opportunity, and so I thank you for that advice on that. And I can't thank you enough for coming on today. I really appreciated
Thank you
this
for the invite.
conversation, and obviously anything that I could do for you, youth leaders can do for you, I'd be more than happy to.
Yeah. And if there's anyone I would say that's listening, that if you feel like you're in the advisor track and you're not quite saying, do I want to be an advisor? I'm not sure. I'd be happy to welcome anybody that wanted to reach out and chat, just in terms of learning what maybe some other sides of the business might be like.
That's very generous of you, Dan. I appreciate that. So I'll throw your LinkedIn in the description, and thank you again for coming on.
Cool. Thank you, Ryan.